like to introduce Lori Stewart. 20 Tevis buckles out of 23 starts, which is absolutely incredible. She's a member of the Western States Tevis Board. She is the director of the Tevis Ed Ride, which is educating new Tevis riders on the trail, which Lori can share so much of her knowledge along with other great riders that are out there willing to do that. She's a member of the Endurance Capital Committee and just a great philosopher of life and horses and endurance. And I just so appreciate you being here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
How do you see, and where do you think that the advice you would give to somebody who's just starting in this sport and maybe building into like starting the 100-mile rides? They've got their 50s, good horse, everything's solid, but that feel that you're talking about a feel in so many ways.
Feel, yeah, and that's.
It's hard to explain a feel sometimes.
Well, it is, but at the same time, most of it is get out of your own way. Stop listening to your friends.
Yeah.
Stop listening to anybody except that horse. And at the time when they're going good, you really feel and embrace and listen to those diagonals being spot on, to how they switch leads, how they go in and out of different gates, how they navigate a line on a ride. You celebrate, because you know it. When they're in the zone, and again the parallels with ultra running are very similar. When you're in the zone, that's a working resting place.
Yeah.
And boy howdy.
Yeah.
But when you're spying on them, and you're going, well, that's not what I saw. Especially after a big ride or something.
Yeah.
And then. You go out and ride. And you end up creating a gym out of your training trails.
Exactly.
What does the horse need today? So you can see where that's coaching. It becomes very, very comfortable and methodical.
Yeah.
It gets very linear.
Well, I was just going to bring that up because I think you try to explain that to somebody who wants to be analytical, and it's going to be very difficult for them to grasp the idea that you have to have this certain feel. Your horse is you can tell you what's going on if you're open enough to seeing it.
And listening, and also not getting too paranoid, because that's the other thing that I really, it worked both ways. Having a husband as a excellent lameness evaluator.
I know from experience, from all my Tevis starts and finishes, that I would swear my horse was lame the day before the ride. Did you see that? Did you see that? Did you see that?
No, it's impressive. It's how faith lives.
Yeah.
You just have to have faith. But what Rick could do, again, at the knee of Bruce Branscombe and Dave Nicholson and Hank Cook and all those guys on the Great American Horse Race, watching them.
Yeah.
And what you see on the front end might be an issue on the back end, because horses operate on diagonals. So I've really seen some interesting instances over time, where like at the Biltmore 100, they had a heat gun, okay? So as they're evaluating these horses out and back, and the vets are calling a front end lameness, but it was the opposite rear diagonal that had the heat and hawk.
Yeah.
That's really cool stuff, because horses do have to be liars. They're a prey animal.
Yeah.
And you put adrenaline in a prey animal, which is what they use to go someplace in a hurry, and adrenaline comes with the ego too in competition. They're going to lie to you.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, he was fine out on the trail.
Well, that's the good thing about having the hour holds and then watching the horse trot out after the hour hold. that because that's when the adrenaline goes down and you actually see
Well,
what they're
and that's,
hiding.
I know, and that's where I totally get, because I've just let it all go, because there's 2 generations now that don't even remember where you went on 100 especially, or a 50, okay? Like Nugget, you had that 1 hour hold. Okay, you go in, your clock stops. In 30 minutes, showtime.
Yeah.
No second guesses. And what happens in that 30 minutes is you are walking them with the slurry, you're cleaning them up, and at 30 minutes, they want you back. And that horse is going to be as good as they're going to be, or they're going to show them all their chinks in the armor.
Yeah.
And that's honesty. That is, and there's always the argument, well, it's the gate separates the fast horses from the good recovering horses from the not good recovering. Recoveries associated with rate of recovery is what stops your clock. But I saw it in the East, my gosh, they get very good at icing horses down. So yes, it is the superior athlete, but it's even more so a superior crew that can stop that clock.
Yeah.
What happens naturally, because human nature, is that people don't continue. Nowadays, they stop that clock, they park them in a mash, and they're blobbing out.
Yeah.
And their scratches get cleaned up, you know what I mean, all that business. But in terms of the honesty of the moment, what the vets are seeing, but again, it's reality. Everybody's adapted to it. That's fine. And what I find, Tevis is a nice mix, is that it'd be nice if we still did on those hour holds. You just stop the clock.
I remember when they did that.
It's so civilized.
And especially, you know what, if I'm leaving Forest Hill and they see a problem, I'd rather see them pull me there than send me down into the dark.
Into the dark.
And be stuck out there on a horse that's having issues. And so, I don't know.
I call it metabolic slamming.
Yeah. You brought up, I'm going to, we're moving along just a little bit, because you brought up Biltmore and rides back east. But you also have experience with international endurance. Can you touch on a little bit of your experiences with the international endurance riding?
It has the potential. God, we had fun. You're right. Okay, for our first was when we were living in Colorado. I'd gone up to the our big 100-mile ride up there. They had the Race of Champions there one year. Bighorn.
Bighorn, okay.
Yeah. So I'd gone up, anyway, we had kids then and all that, so we went up with a motorhome and
Was that Montana? In Montana?
No, that's
Wyoming?
northern Wyoming.
Okay, Wyoming.
And I think the following weekend, because we're kind of on a camping thing, they had the Race of Champions. So I got to talking to Roger Yohe and Andy Bender, and they wanted to see the mountain region have a representation in Flesherton, Ontario, Canada. And they started leaning on Rick to be the chef to keep.
Okay.
So you know how that goes. No 2 years will look the same. I sent my horse up, and we had Naomi Tyler and Jamie. She lived in New Mexico. Stillman? I can't recall the last name right now. Bottom line is, we started 3, we finished 3, and we got the bronze.
Nice.
And again, boy, when Rick is the coach for the team, you finish what you start. Period. No, Flick is having a bad day, therefore I'm going to pull myself. When you ride international, you are not riding for yourself. Mm-hmm. And it's really sad this country never quite got the hang of the fact that you're riding for a team, your country. That when you are chosen for a team, that you've been hired to do a job. And if anywhere along the way, becomes apparent you can no longer do that job. You have not had an award taken from you that is yours to keep. You were just didn't come together. Somebody else is going to step in and do the job.
Yeah.
So we always made sure.
Who did we have our team vet? Was it already? Well, Rick may have done both.
For Canada. But after that was great. 1990, we had Dave Nicholson was our team vet.
Okay. Wow.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It must have been an adventure.
Oh no, he's so freaking smart.
Yeah.
And the nice thing, because again, I started working with Dave in '76. He said, "I wish you hadn't been married, Lori, because you were kind of cute, and your dad grew avocados, and I love avocados." So anyway, at that time when he was our team vet, the nice thing is that he, people were all up in arms about the fact they had to have tapaderos on their stirrups, some FEI safety regulations, and so people were just in their face and would put like bleach bottles on it, just this FU kind of look, crash look. And Dave just totally got it, because he comes from the racing world, of motorcycles and cars through Mark D's and all that. And he says, you're showing up for the race, you're dressing for the race. What is this knucklehead attitude? So that was really, because everybody looks at Dave as having a very different outlook on life. But again, he was NATRC.
Yeah.
That's
a lot of rules.
Yes, that was his, and to be champion at that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So he got it.
Especially back then, because it was super competitive. In the early days of NATRC, it was competitive.
Oh, yes.
So that was quite a
That's
feat.
an accomplishment, yeah. So anyway, so he was a great team vet. And then in 1990, when was it? So Becky, so in '84, Becky won the Tevis Cup. I finished second to her. So we already knew each other from that. Just being, when you have good horses, that's a very thin layer of talent. And that's why decorum is so important at the front of a ride. Because man, oh man, karma's a bitch.
Yeah.
So and especially on hundreds, 50s, I quit riding 50s years ago, because when you have a really good horse, because, you can have a headless horseman. A good Arabian can win a 50 on one breath. It's staggering. It's just phenomenal. But on 100 or 75, strategy starts to come in. Then the mental game steps up. And that's where everybody is polite, or most of them. If they're not, that's where the rest of us, who's going to bury them into this bet check? No.
Yeah.
It's not smart to be a jerk on a 100-mile ride in the front, because people will do what they wish to push you over.
I wouldn't know, because I've never been there
Oh,
before.
I'm just here to tell you, I've ridden second a lot, Becky, and I've laughed about it. Anyway, it's just part. It's the fun part of the game when you're coaching an athlete. And I've finished Tevis 7 times in the top 5. Been a bridesmaid twice. So and the thing of it is, your athlete to theirs. It's not me and the other person.
Yeah.
It's you doing the best for what you're coaching to the other rider, however they have a relationship with the horse. It doesn't matter to me. So, but there are things that I was told, let's face it, I rode with Hal and Phil for 2,000 miles. Believe me, there's all the strategy in the world. And that's where the game gets fun. It's not just, to finish is to win is great. That's true. All you have to do is have a chink in your armor where you don't want it, and you're going, oh, please, God, just let me finish. But when everything's flowing and you're in the zone, and you got one of those that's you've developed, and they're showing you up in the rare air. In fact, after Risky finished second to Becky, I was just emotionally just shattered.
I was not ready for her, because her lights came on during Tevis that year. And to start the ride, quite honestly, in the back, because I just wanted her to have a good day. She had fallen in Granite Chief the year before that, and she was just not in a good place. So I wanted to get her all her weight up and mentally get her in the game, get her listening to me, letting her get to know the zone, not a rider's on my back, I'm going to punch it now. That's her willing to do that, very dangerous. So I started coaching her. And so we started at the back of the pack, literally. Everybody told me the following day, Lori, I rode with you, and I finished at 5. Anyway. And she crossed the river at Poverty Bar. You know, I mean, she just had that. She won the damn thing.
Yeah.
It's just insane. And then I get into Pointed Rocks, and technically by groups, I'm in front of Becky. And this is a horse that I just wanted to finish that day.
And when Becky was on Rio. Yes.
Oh, yeah. So I'm getting, if you don't beat I'll never speak to you again. You can do this. Everybody's hyped. Phil was delighted. He could tell Courtney that when Courtney sidles up and says, so, what group is she in? And Phil told him, and he says, it was one of my best Tevis moments. Courtney just blanched and just almost fainted. And Becky won. And again, it was so funny. She was on antibiotics for that ride. So she had an infection. I had been sick in bed for a couple of weeks. It's just amazing when you develop these extraordinary athletes. And then, son of a gun, am I tall enough for the ride? So what I started doing, because it was just to think about it, turned my stomach. And I couldn't deny her what she was ready for. So I got the book by Lauer, Mental Toughness Training for Tennis. It was for the sport of tennis. And I think his first name's John Lauer. And I have now mental toughness. No, it's stress for success. And I'm a big believer in the rhythm of stress and rest. Anyway, I studied his way of mentally preparing. And the following year, in '85, she was just cruising it again. We get into Deep Canyon Creek, and I look down and she's lost a rear shoe. And I mean, that road, Deep Canyon Road, it's like nature's rasp.
Yeah.
I mean, it is grinding off that foot. So she wasn't really sore, and I put an easy boot that was at least 2 sizes too big. So you're mincing. So even with her mince, meaning their feet they're always under her, none of this throwing it out business, she passed the last chance vet check. She passed the Devil's Thumb vet check. By the time we got into Michigan Bluff,
there was a farrier probably there.
She was 20 minutes in the lead. And Boyd was back behind me, hunting me down. But he was 20 minutes off me. So they trotted her out and put a shoe on that horse. This is Jim Edwards. And, okay. So by the time we got that shoe put on her, brought her back, this girl is cranked. She's ready to go. So I call it the Roman Stadium. You're trotting in Michigan Bluff. And the crowd's cheering. I mean, she looked fabulous.
Wow.
And Jim says, no, I think she's lame. Pulled her. So what's interesting, though, is for me, emotionally, it was easier on me than others. And the reason was, when you see that in the creek, that naked foot, okay, you're toast.
Yeah.
So, and you're riding real conservative, thinking, okay, the tsunami's going to wash over me. But she's that kind of horse. They have that invisible speed.
Yeah.
And strength through those canyons. So, and I also, and people almost rioted. It really backfired on him. But I explain to people, when you are there, like going into Robinson even, if I have a horse that's going to toss me out there, they're going to look gorgeous.
Okay, they're going to come in looking gorgeous. Going up into Michigan Bluff with Retro Rocket, because he was a gray horse, slimed out, with mud, down at that creek before you make that last climb. He's white. When I got done with him there, the horse show was starting the minute I picked up my time card. Because that is it's 2 different rides.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it.
So you look at it as 2 different rides.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, some people look at it as 3 different rides.
Oh, well, it couldn't, no. Well, then, let's, no, I've been there fighting the 5:15 clock. No, that's not a place you ever want to allow yourself to slip into. It happens. But you train away from that ride because it haunts you all day.
Yeah.
It's not the last 15. It haunts you all day. So no. No, there's the sweet spot. I called it very early on. I started studying the printouts. We've had them on tissue paper. At the time, they're real flimsy, but I could watch that.
The amazing thing about this ride is for as long as it's been going, we have record of every year and times for every year.
But you know what we lack, which is so sad, is the temperature and humidity for the day of the event.
Oh, true, because that is a factor.
Oh my gosh, does that ever?
Yeah.
Hal already told me on the XP when we're out there. He says, years that it's a cooler year, Donna wins. When it's a hot year, I can beat her or scare her because he was riding garbs,
Right.
Temperature and humidity. So for me, the analytical type who been studying that before I ever wrote it, and they had already told me what a good writer John McCullough was.
Yes.
And how John had a way of having fresh air all day, good air, good spacing, and a very respectable finish time and place. Top 20 usually.
There you go.
Boom, boom, boom. And I thought, well, heck yeah.
So did you go and follow his ride? You studied his ride?
No, you can. Anybody like you've ridden with at other rides, you're going, we're kind of matched. Let me see how the horse sets up for Tevis.
Okay.
You can look at that.
Yeah.
And then
there's certain riders that I'll look at and see where they come in because they always seem to just come in. Kathy Perry's one. I mean, her rides are always just kind of right in that sweet spot.
There's a sweet spot.
And she, of course, just knows it, just naturally.
Well,
and you do too.
Well, she, again, anyone, if they have any athletic nature themselves, can sell a horse on the zone, so to speak. Kathy knows how to set up whatever she's got into loving that zone.
Yes.
And just drop it in and getting the work done. Now, depending on the horse's athletic ability at that point in time, will determine your ride time.
Exactly.
Well,
I would, there's been rides where I'd be climbing up Squaw Peak and I'd see Kathy and I'd be like, okay, I'm not going to pass her. I'm going to stay right. I'm going to try my hardest to stay behind her and just, be in that because I know that she knows the zone. And that's probably good advice.
Well, the zone for her horse.
For her horse.
That's the
and this
other
wasn't
thing.
that she was racing or anything like
no,
this. This is years later.
Yeah, and the first thing
that she always knew how to get. And there's other riders. I mean, there's plenty. You can name off plenty of riders.
Oh yeah.
And they'll always kind of end up being kind of in that little.
Well, we
spot.
we call it the bowl. At least I call it the bowl of soup. You end up in the same bowl of soup.
Yeah.
And in the early years, the ingredients of the soup kind of changed.
We'll call that a Laurieism.
Okay. Yes.
The bowl of soup.
Bowl of soup. Yes. No, people say you have your isms. Probably like Matthew McKay Smith has his isms. My dad had his isms. But anyway, it's just for me. I'm a visual thinker.
Yes.
So the analogies come very easy. And I remember there was a time, I think in the early 90s, where I was starting and finishing with the same ingredients in the soup. I'm going, people are learning.
Yeah.
No, it's written. That was good news for me to see that. It's nice.
Two wins with Don Van...
Yeah, Don Van Witt.
Van the Man. And then Retro.
Retro was second. It was Risky Rocket.
Risky Rocket was your
86,
second win.
Yeah.
20 Tevis finishes.
Yeah, and 23 starts.
And 23 starts, which is an incredible record.
But you finish what you start.
You finish what you start. I do want to just bring up our experience together at Francisco's. Well, I don't know if was that your 20th? Your 20th buckle? I think it was your 20th buckle. You know, I mean, you know, it's interesting because, you know, I've been in it for quite a while. You've been in it for quite a while.
Well, you used to shoe for us.
I used to shoe for you. And I trained horses. I did some horse training
horses.
for you.
And as soon as Rick was enough in practice where we didn't have to do our shoeing,
ta-da! Yeah, I was a kid. I was a kid back then.
But you were good.
Well, thank you. And so it all kind of came down to, I mean, one of our moments was Francisco's, and I think it's kind of, I look back on that as kind of an experience, because it's one of those moments, especially at Francisco's, where you're not pulled until you're pulled. Does that make sense?
No,
I mean,
no, absolutely.
You know, and so maybe you can share, like, you know,
well,
talk
what
about
happens is it's a long day. And what really makes that stretch challenging is you can get a delta breeze. Mm-hmm. You can get that afternoon winds coming up canyon. And the horse has got a lot of time moving downhill. And they finally get into Francisco. And depending, there can be a temperature change. And there can just be a little chink in the armor that can be alleviated. But unlike earlier in the day when they've got a lot of adrenaline, because again, let's face it, we're slamming them. As soon as that pulse is where it can be meant, that's when they get to trot. And there's going to be adrenaline there to help it out. Okay, so Francisco's, on top of everything else, is an adrenaline-free zone by that time. Mm-hmm. So if there's even a chink in the armor, so that's where you see it. Yeah. And that's why it's, when you're pulled, it's like, not only, you know, when they saw something with Raven, I've had a couple other horses over time, they're saying, you know what, let's take another look. Yeah. Go out and start massaging this, start just, you know, it's usually a chink in the armor because of what I described, the way the day rolls. And if it's metabolic, that's a whole different thing.
Right.
But for me, any metabolic issues are one strike and you're out.
Yeah.
You know,
this was a little chink in the armor.
It's just a little chink in the armor.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was, and I got to experience that with you and, help you get back out on the trail, and it was a great moment. And that was after my husband passed away, and I'll tell you what, you know, he's still working the controls because things happen fortuitously that you have to not only be apart, but you got to be backing around the corner to see what's coming, to engineer things for things to happen that have happened for me at the time, and I'm going, thanks. I mean, what else can you say? Because that's, and again, you know, as I tell people, 20 is plenty. You know? 20 is plenty.
20 is
so with that, now 20 is plenty. You have all this experience with the Western States 100-mile ride, with all the other background that you have with endurance. You've taken on a whole new challenge and a whole new with the Tevis education ride. Mm-hmm. And now you have the ability to inspire and help new riders have that success.
Well, give them, and all you can offer someone is your own experience. Mm-hmm. And fundamentally for me, like I say, the Tevis has never sat with me as it can sit with people because it is the measure of my coaching ability. So that's what brings me back. I developed these horses. It's like, you know, you've made this quilt, you're going to take it to the quilt show, mm-hmm. but you're going to take it to the big dog. You don't want a blue ribbon at the local. That's doing nothing for you.
You're going straight to the state fair.
It's like for me, exactly, you know, and I said I'd much rather finish second to Becky than win in front of a pack of yahoos. That does nothing. Mm-hmm. So it was always that opportunity to judge myself and the horse I was creating
and developing at the time. So, yeah, I mean, we went back, moved to Colorado,
Yeah.
and I experienced, it was a 3/4 sister to the mare I won with, and she came out her first year in 1990 and finished third. Like, what do people get stressed about? That mare, she should inspire all type C personalities, because it was all her bloodlines to begin with. She was 14 one hands, great conformation, type C personality. She hated to feel sweat in her armpits. You know, she would drop into a puddle at a full trot. She felt relief from that scratching, and she'd go in. So, and then, I developed her, I trained her in Colorado, anywhere from the 7,000 to the 11,000 foot level. So think about the advantage of altitude in training. Any ultra guy person will tell you. That's why they train in Flagstaff. So, and that's why Garrett, for many reasons, Garrett did so well, because you get that punch of altitude. So I show up a month in advance. I'm staying at the Humphreys. I've got, you know, God, Annie was only 2. You know, we're just this pile in the motorhome up in Forest Hill, but I could heat acclimate her. And she showed me nothing in setting her up in heat training that this girl was what she was. But she had a resting pulse in the mid-20s. So what that did, and I'd done 100 or 2 on her, done a couple hundreds, and you have a different standard, because when a horse with a mid-20s resting pulse only recovers in the 50s at a check, you got a problem.
Yes.
Everybody's, oh, your horse is fine. You're sitting there going, all righty then. What are you lying about? What's holding that thing up? What's going on? You know, because it's different. Now, her sister had a resting pulse in high 30s, low 40s, risky. So she was a lot of work for getting her down, you know, this gait.
But you weren't worried about her when she would come in at 60. But when you have a horse with a low, just naturally low heart rate, and she comes in at 60,
you're going,
let's
have a conversation.
Going on here.
You're not saying a word.
No.
And that's the other thing. You know, if the vet has got to point it out to you, you've waited too long.
Yeah.
And it also reminds you, and Dave Nicholson told me this years ago,
He says, you better know that horse 10 times better than any vet that's looking at that horse for 3 to 5
Well,
3
that
minutes.
is his philosophy to this day
Always.
with all of his rides. Yes.
always. So, and that is the truth.
So for that mare, as Phil Gardner said afterwards, he says, well, that's just
Shows me, you know, you don't have to have a great horse, just a good horse. Ride it well, and you can finish in the top 10 or top 5 on the Tevis, because it is not a speed ride.
Yeah.
There are places, like with Risky when she won it that year, we had trained on that cow trail, and the gal running in second, her horse was dogging it. I was just in that wad of people, and she says, can you pass me? My horse is dogging it. And I thought, you idiot. Okay. No worries. And Risky dropped out of those, well, basically after Dardanelles, she took off. And we were by ourselves, it's strictly on her, and I let her gallop for miles. What magic.
What's interesting,
With the Doobie Brothers playing in your head.
From
you
Dardanelles,
got to have that choreography going in your head.
From Dardanelles to Francisco, most of it is trottable.
heck
You
yeah.
can move on it.
No,
and
that's
what I tell
something that we
people.
have to
Yes.
explain to new
Yes.
riders. Hey, you can move on that. It's just scary because it's dark.
But it's not scary to the horse.
No.
None of my horses have come to breakfast having face planted during the night. And I live in a forest, okay?
Yeah.
And they party hardy during the night. So I'm just, we can all be assured that, boy, there's good going on that. And that's one thing with the Ed ride.
And they've done a great job maintaining the trail as well.
Yes,
So,
and we were given
okay,
the haircut
you're talking about
other
the
day.
Ed ride.
Yeah, so that is an advantage of the Ed ride, is that it is the safest way you can pre-ride the meat of the coconut, so to speak. Nobody can really pre-ride, and as Becky Hart said, you survived the start to Robinson.
It shouldn't be pre-ridden, is my opinion.
It's just...
You take your chances on the day of the ride.
And you ride your ground.
Yeah. Ride your ground.
What is there to learn? So anyway, that's one of the things I enjoy about the Ed Ride is that I have morphed it into my once-a-year dinner party.
Yeah.
That I can share this beautiful trail with friends, and that your sense of humor better show up. Some really smart people are invited to share some pretty cool stuff
Exactly.
about their success and what they do for a
So
living.
you can draw those people and bring them in and let them share their knowledge. Where do you see, like, we are getting new blood constantly, and which is exciting.
No,
and
it
what
is.
we want,
Yeah.
we want new people to get involved in the ride, to keep this alive for as long as we can keep it going. But what do you see with the newer endurance riders? What if you were to give advice, like just one good solid piece of advice to someone who has Tevis aspirations, what would it be?
As was taught to me, ride your own ride.
Ride your own ride.
I mean, that I heard both Phil and Hal say that in the middle of their stories, coming on the Pony Express Trail, because it's really funny when somebody isn't riding their own ride and you can play with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's where you're going to make mistakes too.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, you start, feeding off, it's really scary. It's always scary for me to be towing a horse.
Yeah.
When I knew better than the rider that the horse was running out of gas, and you really shouldn't be latching onto my horse.
Yeah.
Don't be doing that. But of course, that you can't say that because it hurts their ego. But what I have done is, like, between Devil's Thumb and Deadwood, press, and they're going to hang on you.
Yeah.
But guess what? Not justice, but the horse is saved
Well,
at Deadwood
Yeah.
because you're just going, you're not saying this.
Yeah.
But your horse is really saying some things to you that say, back off.
Yeah.
I need to regroup. We've got the cow trail. You let me rest now. Take it easy through these canyons because I'm not the big dog climber that my adrenaline is making me out to be. I can pass a ton of people on Cal Street because it is good going.
Yeah.
I mean, Lucy and I, we rode it, and I forgot. It's gorgeous, step one. Step two, that's good footing.
It's good footing. And I think that's something important for new Tevis riders
Yes.
to understand. We've all been behind people out there that aren't familiar with the trail, and you're yelling, "It's trottable! It's trottable!" in front of you you can trot this.
Or, what I've had pretty good luck with is just getting off trail myself.
Yeah.
You kind of know. You get a sense. There's certain, anyway, I read the ground too. You read the horse, you read the ground. And you say, you know what, I can come up, I can do a quick pass, and I've got, what you don't want is your horse. You go ahead and you ask him for the pass. You let him know, everybody's cool with it, and your horse gets partway around and goes, can I get to know this horse next to me?
And you're on a trail this wide.
And you're on, you're passable, but it ain't going to be that wide for very long. So you're
Right.
going, we'll have the conversation after we finish this, shall we? You can do a little towing here, but don't, No, it's really funny. You're always, it's that all-day conversation. But, so for us to be able to, because all the mentor teams, getting stronger and stronger every year. A lot of what I call repeat offenders, people coming back. I'd love to mentor again this year. Is that it's a tough weekend, but there are friendships that have been formed with these people aspiring to ride Tevis, and people have ridden it maybe just once before, not finished. That now they have this support system.
Well, as a plug to the Tevis Ed Ride, the completion rate is much higher if you have done if you went through the Tevis Ed Ride.
And it's why my completion rate was high. I never rode Tevis, and I did catch ride my own horses, come from back east, come from wherever, that I didn't make a point to pre-ride the canyons, to have somebody dump me at Robinson Flat and pick me up in Forest Hill. And I preferred most to ride by myself, which I know is a big no-no. But
then I knew what I had.
Yeah.
If it's a catch ride, like Andy Bender's horse Chance, took him through Tevis.
Right.
And I rode it by myself. Going down, we had to do the Last Chance, that grindy road, from Dusty Corners down to Last Chance. And he was a little footsore after. But Andy had trained him all in the mountains and on the XP rides. And I said, well, the best chance we have for this boy, because otherwise he was just a semi-truck. Mm-hmm. God, a great horse to ride. Is we put sneakers on him. We put the equithotics on. So that is, because that's something my little mare would deal with, is she could develop corns. Mm-hmm. So put her in sneakers. Girl's died and gone to heaven.
That's a shoe that has proven itself on this ride many times over.
And it proved that it wasn't ready, and then he figured it out, and it proved that it was ready.
Yeah,
and,
we went through his ups and downs.
Yes, it did.
I was putting prototypes on.
As all R&D does.
So
we're talking about my current passion, I guess it would be, or hobby. Like I say, 20 is plenty for the Tevis to compete, to be on the Tevis riding it. And for endurance in general, I find as I'm getting older, just packing up to go to a ride, and again, I lost my husband 10 years ago, so that whole collaboration, and a lot of people I used to go to ride with aren't riding anymore. So point is, what I've segued onto is international travel on motorcycle. So, which endurance riding has pre-adapted me for. Mm-hmm. Dual sport, again, you're reading the ground, situational awareness, following, safe following, I mean, all of it is, to me, it's very similar. The difference is, when I get to my destination, I mean, it really hit me. We meaning my oldest son and I, and he's a black diamond track racer. I mean, this guy's the real deal. But he takes care of Mom, okay? So we're in Costa Rica at this beautiful resort, beautiful ocean view. And we've had, you ride Costa Rica, and these are long days. They can't not be.
Incredible.
Because you're going in and out of these little one-lane villages, and every village starts with a single lane, ends with a single lane bridge, And then, anyway, the way people drive, we're mic'd up, so you could really tell my son's a trash talker. Anyway, you're in this, and, you order a glass of wine with dinner, okay. And then they come back through, at the end, and they ask, if you'd like another glass of wine. And I'm thinking, if this were a multi-day ride with the horses, I would be sitting here going, I'd really like to, but dang it, I got to go back to camp. The afternoon storm's moving in. I'm going to have to switch out blankets. In other words, your first and foremost
is the horse.
Which is great. But at a point in time when 7 hours on the motorcycle is a nothing burger compared to 7 hours on a horse. Mm-hmm. And I'm still curious about what's over the hill. So I found it's been a very nice segue. And I'm still riding a lot. I mean, the horse I'm riding is endurance fit. Mm-hmm. And that's really fun. And she does her best work by herself. So when I do ride, I go by myself, and she's just like, and it's just us. And that's
with
really
no
nice.
Aspirations to do a ride,
no.
Really. Now, I want to hit on that just a little bit because you've been competitive. Mm-hmm. We talked a lot about your competitive spirit. I mean, but you were able to turn. You still enjoy just being present with the horse.
Well, that's
and
the
you don't
biggest
have
thing.
to have that competition.
No, and that's why I had to really focus on mental toughness training. Mm-hmm. Is that my favorite part is the training.
Okay.
And I think the reason is, it's not the quilt show, it's making the quilt. And I think the reason is, it is so creative. And it made me a better mother. Through all this, we were married 7 years before we had our first child. And the same year I had our first child, Rick was riding Tevis. So I had
the child by C-section. I'm hung up in the hospital, right? Because, C-section. And I had guests in. Eva was there, Taylor, she was going to ride again, and Rick was going to ride van, and all this is happening. And oh, by the way, I'm going to have a baby. So I'm wanting out, okay. And my doctor's being a little stingy. And then he comes in the Wednesday before. They have the front page on the Auburn Journal is me winning the Tevis the year before. Out of jail. He dropped the paper on the bed and he goes, well, if you can do that, go home.
Were you out there crewing?
We came into town.
Oh, okay,
with
good.
Baby. Yeah, we came in, but no, came into town. And it was interesting. Donna Fitzgerald, years before that, she had already coached me because she'd had Mike and started back seriously riding right away. And she says she has had pelvic hip complex issues. And part of that she attributes to having, while the ligaments are still very lax, getting on and riding a lot, and that just sent things out of equilibrium in a way that she struggled with after that. So I found that really instructive.
Yeah.
She said, and I did, you can ride right up until,
I think of Judy Gerhardt nursing Andrew Gerhardt in
lot
Michigan
of girls.
Bluff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All along the way.
Oh, exactly.
The brand new mother with a baby, and they had to bring the baby to each vet check.
Yep. No, it's
Well, let's talk about family, because we brought family up. Rick Stewart, Dr. Stewart, an amazing veterinarian, airline pilot.
Yes.
A car connoisseur. I mean, everything about
very
Rick,
busy brain.
A very busy brain, and we lost him. Was it been? Like
he was 10 years ago. He was only 61.
He was 61, and you've told all these great stories about these adventures, that you've been on, and you two were a power couple in this sport for so many years, and such an influence on so many people. And then along with that, you raised a family along in between. I mean, talking about having a baby, and then the next year going out and winning Tevis.
No, winning Tevis and then having the baby.
Okay, winning Tevis and then having the baby. And so that relationship, with the two of you, it had to have been just this amazing.
It was
part of your life.
Well, it was. And, I appreciate that I went from the bosom of my own family to a relationship with him at 19 at UC Davis, where I was scared out of my mind. This man, straight away, was brilliant. We had physics class together, and he'd embarrass me because we were sitting together, and he'd fall asleep, and the proctor's there lecturing, and there he is nodding, and I'm sitting there madly taking notes. But he really taught me how to study. Anyway, I had this, I think, the social intelligence. He had the intellectual intelligence. And in our differences, you learn the hard way, but you learn, if you're lucky, that is the strength of the team, where the whole becomes greater than the sum of the parts, is in your differences. And in civility, in first and foremost, separate to the rest of your lives together, it is a crystal, which means it's made of crystal, which means it's fragile and always will be. So respect it and respect each other. And that we could do, and we could do that easily. And it always helps to have a similar sense of humor, and it always helps to stick it out. So you can have the conversation across the room in the bad party, and you're suddenly exiting the door without ever having to say a word. Those are some real strong perks to an old marriage. And my parents, had a good marriage. That always helps. My sisters did. So we support each other in making what's good even better. And so for us, again, while dating, he said, I never want any 2 years of our lives to look the same. So what that did was allowed us to say yes to the first opportunity to run a pack station
and
in
you
the
stuck
Sierra.
to that your whole marriage.
Oh, yes,
I mean,
yes.
That's
That is-
incredible.
it really, it just, okay, so are we ADHD?
I don't know. I don't think so.
I
think
don't,
that's,
I don't
that's-
know. Because the other thing, what we really enjoyed, Rick was an excellent chef to keep.
Yeah.
For the national team and for regional teams, because he wasn't ego involved. He was into the engineering of team and coaching of team. So, and I could take care of a lot of the icky administrative stuff with USET and, different things like that. Or a rider, one of our riders would just have to go on and on forever and ever about their horse. Okay.
Yeah.
I could listen to that.
Yeah. Rick didn't want to listen to that probably. He was more interested in the facts.
What man would, no. No.
Yeah.
No. So anyway, point is, in our differences was our strength, and we absolutely respected what was so strong in the other. And when he was restless with how veterinary medicine was trending towards upselling, and the business model was coming through in the veterinary journals, he just went, that's not me, that's not why I showed up. We lived in Forest Hill. We'd have somebody in Forest Hill would have a dog hit by a car. We'd take care of it in our kitchen table. Yeah. And no, they would have to pay with a cord of wood. But, but that's comfortable. Asking someone who probably can't pay to also do this, no. So he always had a passion for flying. He had started in college, and he started working on getting his hours there at the Auburn Airport from Sunshine Flyers, Mike Duncan. And when our firstborn was 6 weeks old, he tested for his single engine. He got it, and we flew to Southern California that day.
Wow.
That's the other thing that scares me. He was a risk taker, but a very calculated risk taker, as my oldest son is now. Again, he flies for American as a captain on 737, but is also, like I say, a Black Diamond track motorcycle, and he has, anyway, amazing skills. But those guys are the ones you want in the cockpit, because they never skip a step on a checklist, and they are willing to face difficult things and think it through without skipping a step. So that was, success is achievable. They don't look at failure like other people do as some kind of signal that I shouldn't. No, and I call it, what would our story be, life on the tail of a comet? Because he was a comet. Because with that brilliance, he was symptomatic starting in 2010, 2011 for Alzheimer's. No family history. So for people who listen to those things that say, buy this drug, do this puzzle, whatever, and you can avoid it, no. There are other factors. And in our family, the joke is, can you play with a brain so hard that you can break it? Because he was talking seriously, because, there's mandatory retirement in the airlines. Yeah. And he did, end up, he bid over to the 777 when it first came off the line, because he wanted the new car smell. Oh. And yes, he did fly a few that he came in, and you're looking at the hours on the jet going, son of a gun, we're kind of like the second crew in this thing, very cool. But he also was up there in what they're figuring out with I think there's a cocktail that being up in 32,000, 35,000 feet, anyway, what the brain is having to deal with. And I think there is a disposition for it. Who knows? The bottom line is I will never know. And it really has shown me when people say, because he had no insight, when he started struggling, he had no insight, that he thought somebody was screwing with the passwords. He was asking me for help on putting things together that he had taught me, but didn't, as one of our kids said, how can you be worried you forgot
that you don't know something anymore if you've forgotten you never knew it. And it's a Swiss cheese life. So as the neurologist said, over time, he said, he's got so much more going on in his brain than the rest of us that they can lose a lot and it just reworks. So it's a Swiss cheese life of adaptation, working, and not even being conscious that it's happening. He had a very short period of insight that was absolutely tragic and suffering, but for the most part, no. And so I had 2 careers. I was a real estate appraiser for 20 years, and then I went back to school for physical therapy. So I really enjoyed working in skilled nursing and transitional care.
Yeah.
So I got to work with a lot of folks that whose reality had changed. Let's put it that way. And you do join their journey, and you do become brilliant in the innocuous reply and in the redirect. So again, I was pre-adapted when he started struggling, that we never had to say those words. And then they don't say words anymore. So it's, but before all that sets the stage, no, we did something different every year. You know, Great American Horse Race. We're back in 77, we started riding Tevis. You know, I finished for the first time that year. And 70, 80 graduates vet school. 79, I almost win the damn thing. And we're building a practice and building a satellite clinic in Forest Hill. And then in 80, you know, I win Tevis again. In 81, we're starting our family. And he's got the successful business, but he's a licensed pilot, and he got his instrument rating. And then he had that fortuitous, through a vet client, a client of ours in Forest Hill. He was a pilot for Learjet, bank in Davis, was packaging and selling loans on secondary market in Midwest. So they had a Learjet, and they had 2 pilots that they were just flying like crazy. So Rick already had his instrument rating, but he didn't have a multi-engine. And he got his multi-engine, and then they sent him to flight safety. The bank did, because the pilot, our client, talked him into paying for it.
Wow.
He can be a relief pilot. We're not keeping his lights on. He's a veterinarian. So let's invest in this guy, and he can be a relief pilot. So for the airline world, that gives you your jet time. And then in the meantime, we sold the Auburn Veterinary Clinic to Animal Medical Center, which Larry Goss was with, and the Jacksons. And anyway, we knew all them from vet school. Like I say, it was that whole group that has moved through as endurance riders, you know, like Sandy Schuler and Nancy Elliott and all those guys. They were all in the vet school at the same time, different classes maybe. So I can't keep straight who was a classmate and who wasn't. But yeah, I mean, think about that. And then he did relief work, and then applying to all the airlines. And he got a call from Continental, and they were in bankruptcy, but were hiring because they were getting out of it. So again, for me, that's the other thing. He always supported me and in my goals more than I could believe in myself. That was from month 1. Which, honey, you know this better than I do. Why do I get a higher grade? Because I never learned to take tests, and I never learned to believe in myself. So he wanted to, fly for a living and take on this bankrupt airline. And we have 2 kids, and he was born in Colorado. We did it. And that's something also people need to always remember is you do it. Do it. But, like he said, you've got to, whatever you commit to it for at least 5 years. Because you need to ride, getting it, the honeymoon, the what the heck, the day-to-day lifestyle.
Right.
That you either figure out how to make work sustainably, or you say, I'm going to go do something else. And usually it's 5 years, 5 to 6, depending on the training required. And then, if it becomes this is not a good fit for me, go do something else.
Nothing's holding you back. To do
Well,
that.
if you get the wrong partner, there's somebody holding you back. Honey, we've got the 2 kids. Wait a minute. We've got 20 acres here. We love California. If we sell this, we're out of California for good. That was our big concern.
Yeah.
So you just got to be willing to take the risk. And it certainly paid off. Because then when we were involved in international riding, thanks to Andy Bender and Roger Yohe leaning on him, we had flight benefits.
Oh,
So,
that helped out.
yes, so we could get to these other countries. Sometimes it was a little sketchy getting there because you're flying non-rev, but we could get there. And for us, it was mentally, because the other thing, flying, it sounds glamorous, but I'm sorry, as he always said, everything just becomes a job. Doesn't matter how complicated, everything becomes a job. So for pilots, many of them have separate businesses because they have all this mandatory off time. They're always playing their schedule, so even they can get more money for the hours they're flying, all that kind of stuff. And for him, it was international riding and working all the levers with the FEI and the USET and the riders and all that, and doing it together, sort of like Chuck and Pam do for the Tevis.
Yeah.
You get a twofer, and it makes your lunches together very entertaining because you can laugh about a lot of stuff
Exactly.
and put on your
Yeah.
your good
Well,
person
I think
professional.
I think of like the couples that we know in this sport, and especially with Tevis, Bob and Julie Sir, of
Yeah.
course, are, and they have the award for the husband-wife team.
Yes,
My wife
yes.
and I think we came in
Did you?
like
I was
second
gonna
or
say,
something
yeah,
like that
good,
one year.
okay.
And we ride together and train
Right.
together and
Right.
ridden. We've crossed the finish line twice holding hands at Tevis, which
Very
is
good.
like I think pretty good. But you
And you
just brought
weren't
up.
beating each other with a crop.
Well, that might have happened back further, but you
Well,
get
there's
over it. You
always
got
that
100
recovery.
miles. You got 100 miles to get over it.
Yes, yes, exactly.
But you and Rick rode miles together, trained together. I'm
Oh, yeah.
sure
Oh,
did
yeah.
lots of training.
Oh, yeah.
And Rick rode Virginia City 100. He rode the Tevis multiple times, VC Virginia
Yep.
City multiple times, and he truly loved the sport. It
yes.
was a big passion for him, and he made great contributions to our sport as well.
He did, yeah.
And,
he
I want to pay
loved
honor
it.
to him
Yeah,
because,
no, and
because he was an
is
amazing individual.
worthy of honoring
Absolutely.
because of his generosity of his mind and his generosity of his time and being able to kind of see the potential. That's what people say, like one of my sisters, she got her pilot's license. She said, I never would have if it wasn't for Rick, but he believed in me.
Yeah.
And it's not an articulated one. It's like these people come to the Ed Ride. It deserves and is becoming very much a master class because I believe these people have got the raw material to love that trail every bit as much as many of us love it. And the win it's in the journey. As Julie said, one of her best Tevis's, her favorite, best memories, was one she did not finish.
Could be.
She said it was.
Yeah.
And this is a girl who's won Hagen Cup 3
Yeah.
times. So, and like I say, when I won in '86, we were duking it out and we left Highway 49 crossing, But I also rode with her when she tried her 80th birthday. She was 80 and she tried. And we got as far as God would let us on that day, and that was Roby Point.
Yeah.
And that's where you know what 5:15 looks like on your watch, because you can see it. And she said, Lori, I'll never forgive myself if you don't go on and finish this thing.
Yeah.
And then you
What
can't.
an experience.
Oh, God. And I couldn't say to her, well, I don't care about finishing, because this woman had risked her life, potentially. Anybody does who starts it, but especially at that age.
Yeah.
And not really knowing what the issue was that affected her equilibrium. Rick's theory was the horizon where you're on the side of a mountain for so long, and she attributed it to some dehydration.
A little bit of, I was going to say, a little dehydration doesn't
yes,
help.
and that really plays.
Yeah.
And she just, her body would consciously try to go perpendicular with the canyon.
I've seen runners do that too.
They do.
All right. Tell me, what would the best advice you could give an endurance rider, somebody that has experience but needs some good advice?
Yeah.
What's the advice you would give them?
Ride your own ride and hold your privacy, which means you don't have to share everything, because that messes with your mind and it messes with that direct line you need to know about your horse.
Okay.
And you listen more than you talk on the front end when you're with other riders. And boy, if you want to know how a person's developed their horse, compliment their horse. Again, people wouldn't even look second thought to Retro, who turned out to be a phenomenal horse, except to worry about him, because they were so enamored, as we all deserve to be, our own horse. So if you're riding along, and I love watching a good horse work. To watch Rio, I've been blessed to watch that horse work a number of times. It is magic. So you just say, oh my gosh, I love his movement. Poof, sit back, listen. And then you hear, not only over time, especially if you respect what they're saying, you're listening, they will then tell you the times they blew it, which is good for a long ride laugh. And you also learn something. If you, again, can learn from their mistake that they're honest about processing with you, and therefore you recognize yours coming and you can pump the brakes before you actually make it, that's a nice thing to do for your horse. But fundamentally, so what all that is feeding is ride your own ride. Hold your own brain. It's about you, your brain. You're filling the chinks in the armor for the horse, if they have them. Don't lie to yourself. That's the other thing. If you need to save face by saying different things to different people about your horse, don't buy your own line. It's not fair to the horse. Because you can develop strength in that weakness, and you can keep from using too much of the strength of the horse. So then you see that longevity that some of our riders achieve, because they create that equilibrium between the system. So when the horse is in the zone, it's in a zone that's a balance for the whole horse. His strong parts, his weak parts. It's all good. And that's a really magic place.
Just a great philosopher of life and horses and endurance.
Oh,
just so
thank
appreciate you being here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you, Matt.